Here we go. Okay, so public service announcement before. I don't know how many of the people here are in Israel and how many are outside of Israel. But I know that there are several people here in Israel. So maybe raise your hands, those who are with camera and are in Israel. Okay, so that's quite a bit. So as we know, we may be interrupted at any moment by an alarm, and if we are, then safety is first. I will schlep my computer into my safe room, and you, if you can, schlep your computers or your phones or whatever. We'll have a few minutes break to reorganize, and then hopefully, if my grandson, my 2-year-old grandson will let us, we will continue as much as possible. We can't really extend our time because the study day is very quick-paced, and things have to end at the time they have to end. So let's hope the Iranians let us have a few hours of uninterrupted study.
Unfortunately, no internet reception in the shelter. It's not.
Well, you know, we do what we can do, and let's hope we don't need to.
In my mama, there is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you put your thing in the share screen so we can see it together with you?
Yes, I will do so. I just want to say a few
Thank you.
initial words before I put the presentation on the screen. Just for those who don't know me, my name is Sigalit. I live in Shorashim, which is a small village up in the north, near Carmiel, if you know it, sort of on the same line as Akko. I'm a Talmud person. I have a PhD in Talmud, and I'm also a graduate of the Hartman Institute's rabbinical program, and I'm an active member of the conservative community in Shorashim, and a longtime participant and teacher in the Women's Study Days, and happy that we've managed to, that Diane and her amazing team has managed to pivot within a week from having it physically in Jerusalem to having it virtually on Zoom. Which is on the one hand kind of sad because we're not meeting face to face and hugging, but on the other hand makes it possible and easier for people to join at will. I do ask that while we speak, you try to keep yourselves on mute in general, just so it doesn't interrupt the flow. But I do encourage you also, if you want to ask a question, contribute a comment, mutiny against something that I've said, and offer an alternative, please feel free to take yourself out of Zoom, out of mute, and just throw your comment, your question, your analysis in. Of course, try to keep in mind that we have a limited time frame and try to keep it short. And I will try to monitor the chat periodically to see if people who don't feel comfortable talking in the Zoom have written something, but that might take, that might not happen immediately. So I will do my best to juggle all these things. And in the past years, I think specifically in Israel and also in the United States, we've had a lot of reasons to be angry at God. But perhaps one can say that in general, the world feels like it's been going kind of off the rails for the past few years in various dimensions. And I think in times like these, while maybe we should be blaming people, leaders, communities, populations for what is going wrong with the world, there's also a tendency to be angry at God, because if God is supposed to be the manager of the world, then how come he's letting all these horrible things happen? And here we are sitting in places that are more or less safe, worried about what's going on outside our rooms, and perhaps angry at God. So what I wanted to do during our time together is to show that this is not a modern invention, that it's not the fact that we have in the 21st century become modern and enlightened and advanced, that we are able perhaps to let ourselves be angry at God, but that being angry at God, or perhaps sometimes disappointed with God, is something that has been with us from biblical times all the way to the present century, to the present time. And I want to show a selection of texts that demonstrate it through different viewpoints, starting from the Bible, through the literature of the sages, the Talmud, and then on to later periods, and also to modern day Israeli poetry. And I shared the text file in the chat, but I will also share a presentation now on which I will be showing the text that we'll be reading. This picture, by the way, is what the AI engine of my choice suggested to use as the picture at the beginning of the presentation. I initially asked it to draw me a picture of somebody angry at God, and it said that it is not willing to do such a thing. So I asked it to draw a metaphor for somebody angry at God, and this is what it chose to show. So interesting, and we could perhaps discuss this. So I want to start with a text that we often read in various contexts, but when I started preparing this lesson, it suddenly sort of leaped out at me. And this is the very well-known text in which Abraham is told by God that he is going to destroy the city of Sodom. And then, as we know, Abraham confronts God. And he comes forward and he says, will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? What if there should be 50 innocent within the city? Will you then wipe out the place and not forgive it for the sake of the innocent 50 who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty, so that innocent and guilty fare alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? And this is a very famous passage. And you remember that it continues with Abraham showing his Middle Eastern roots and bargaining with God, trying to wheedle him down all the way down to the 10 righteous people who might save the city, and then, of course, not being successful in doing that. But looking at the words of Abraham here, these are not the words, I think, that we, or perhaps not the stance that we would expect from a man facing God. We would expect a man perhaps trying to very politely suggest to God that perhaps he might want to reconsider. But that's not the tone that Abraham is using here. Abraham is using a very firm and assertive tone, and in fact, perhaps also an angry tone. I think what Abraham is saying here, that there is something fundamentally wrong with God if he would consider doing such a thing, punishing people who are innocent along with the people who are guilty. This is not the image of God that Abraham is willing to live with. And Abraham isn't shy of confronting God and rebuking him angrily. And it's interesting that this really is, you see, Genesis 18, it's right at the very, very beginning of the Bible. We already see a man who is unashamedly angry at God and rebuking him. And sure enough, going a few hundreds of years later, we encounter Jeremiah, the prophet who prophesies the destruction of the first temple. And whereas Abraham in the previous text was angry at God for bringing a punishment upon innocent people, here we see perhaps the opposite. And Jeremiah here says, you will win, O Eternal One, if I make claim against you, and I shall present charges against you. Look at this, a man presenting charges against God, bringing him to trial, as it were. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why are the workers of treachery at ease? And as you can see here, Jeremiah is railing against the very way of the world. Whereas Abraham in the previous text was angry at God for going out of his way in one specific instance to punish people who are innocent, here Jeremiah is railing against the way the universe is built, because he says, why does the way of the wicked prosper? How is it? And we know, unfortunately, that that's how the world works, where wicked people prosper and treacherous people are at ease. And Jeremiah continues, you've planted them and they've taken root. They spread, they even bear fruit. You're present in their mouths, but far from their thoughts. So really, Jeremiah says, how is it that you, who are the master of the universe, have created this world in such a way that is fundamentally unjust? It should, we expect it to be, to work in such a way that the righteous gain rewards and the wicked gain punishments, but it often happens quite the reverse. And Jeremiah is distraught at this, is angry at God about this. And of course, we see here this painting by Horace Varna. This is particularly painful with the background of the destruction of the temple. Now, in the case of Abraham and Jeremiah, we see them railing at God about the way that the world is built, about the way that God is handling it, about other people. But I want to bring one last biblical case, that of Job. And in this case, Job is speaking about himself, about his fate. And you remember Job's situation. We see him here after that horrible wager between God and Satan, where Satan dares God to bring suffering upon Job and see if his belief remains untroubled. And one by one, God takes away Job's property and Job's sons and daughters, and then Job's health. And here we see him really at the pit of despair. And Job says to God, am I the sea or the dragon that you have set a watch over me? When I think my bed will comfort me, my couch will share my sorrow, you frighten me with dreams and terrify me with visions. Even sleep isn't a refuge from my terrible sufferings. I think, okay, at least if I go to bed, then I can have some temporary respite, but no. God sends horrible dreams and visions, till I prefer strangulation, death to my wasted frame. I'm sick of it. I shall not live forever. Let me be, for my days are a breath. What is man that you make much of him, that you fix your attention upon him? You inspect him every morning, examine him every minute. Will you not look away from me for a while? Let me be till I swallow my spittle. You see, sometimes people feel blessed when God holds them in his regard. But here we see that Job feels cursed. He begs God to look away from him because he feels that every minute that he's in the focus of God's gaze, his suffering keeps mounting and mounting. And he really doesn't understand why. What has he done to merit this? If I have sinned, continues Job, what have I done to you, watcher of men? Why make of me your target and a burden to myself? Why do you not pardon my transgression and forgive my iniquity? For soon I shall lie down in the dust. When you seek me, I shall be gone. And you see these painful words of Job, and really can identify with him, with his complaint against God. Why? What warrants this horrible suffering? So from these three biblical examples, Abraham, Jeremiah, Job, all railing against God, I want to jump a few hundreds of years forward to the literature of the sages. I want to read a small tale whose connection to our topic will not be clear initially, but then our next text will will clarify it. And this is one of the texts that I really like about the Talmud. You know, the Talmud is before Maimonides, before the Rambam. Maimonides instilled in us this abhorrence of the idea that God is in some way physical. But if we read the simple text of the Torah and also the simple text of the literature of the sages, the Talmud and the Mishnah, it's evident that in their times, they had no problem envisioning that. And this is one of those stories. Rabbi Avin Barav Ada said, Rabbi Yitzchak said, from where is it derived that the Holy One, blessed be He, wears tefillin? Picture that in your head, God wearing tefillin. And I skipped here the biblical proof of this, and I want to continue to the next bit of the conversation. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said to Rav Chia bar Avin, what is written in the tefillin of the Master of the world? I bet you hadn't thought about that question, right? I mean, in our tefillin, we have the Shema and other biblical texts glorifying God. But maybe God, when he wears tefillin, he has other texts inside the boxes of his tefillin. And sure enough, Rabbi Chia bar Avin replied to the question, what does God have written in his tefillin? He has written in his tefillin, who is like your people Israel, one nation in the land. And this is a very interesting kind of thought, because in our tefillin, the texts glorify God who is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The Lord is one. And what Rabbi Chia here is saying, in God's tefillin, it says that the people of Israel are one. And so each of us is reflecting on the oneness of each other. We, the people of Israel, are reflecting on the oneness of God, and God is reflecting on the oneness of the people of Israel. So this is an interesting story, which we could probably discuss further, but I brought it here to serve our next text. And I want to say a few words before I show you the next text, because the background in which it was written is important and interesting. 25 years have passed since the beginning of the Second Intifada, which you may remember, the uprising in the Palestinian West Bank and in Gaza, and for a few days also within Israel of the Green Line, of the Palestinians. And this was a period of about 4 years in which there were many terrorist attacks, bus bombings, suicide attacks, thousands of people killed on both sides. And there's an Israeli poet called Eliaz Cohen, who lives in Kibbutz Kfar Etzion, which is in Gush Etzion, which is on the other side of the Green Line in the West Bank, but very close to Jerusalem. And he wrote a poem during this period. You see, the poem is called, Hear, O Lord, Israel is your people, Israel is one. And the reference is clear, right? This is a sort of mirror of Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. If Shema Yisrael is Hear, O Israel, the Lord is your God, the Lord is one, here, this is the mirror of it. And it says this poem is a yichud for the days of awe. This is a well-known genre in piyut, within liturgy. In the days of awe, in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, as we all know, we spend a long time in synagogue because many piyutim, many pieces of liturgy have been added to the regular liturgy. And one genre of this special liturgy is yichud. So he writes it, and he writes it in the book Shema Adonai, from the poems of 5761 to 5764. This is the Hebrew dates of the years of the Second Intifada. And here's the poem. And you shall love Israel, your people, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. I assume people are kind of translating and mirroring this in your heads, right? Because this is mirroring again the Shema, the Ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, and here it is, and you shall love Israel, your people, b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol me'odecha. But whereas the Shema that we say 2 times a day is addressed to Israel, and we should love God, here it's addressed to God that you shall love Israel. And these children who are slain for you each day shall be upon your heart, and you shall inscribe them in your heavens and speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk on the way, when you lie down and when you rise. B'shochbecha uv'kumecha. Again, this is straight Shema. But then he departs. And you shall bind them as a sign upon your arm, blue luminous numbers, and they shall be like tefillin between your eyes, like the wound of the bullets, and you shall write them in blood upon the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. I want to stop here for a minute to let you read through this again, and then I want to pause for a minute and open up for comments. So anyone want to unmute and share your thoughts, your feelings from this poem? Do you identify with it? Are you shocked by it? Troubled?
It calms me and it excites me at the same time. It calms me that Elias, first of all, thank you for bringing it. It's an amazing poem and it's an amazing idea. And I want to meet him, Elias Cohen, because what does he believe? Who is he? Who is you, God? Who is God? That's it.
I should perhaps add that Elias Cohen is a religious Zionist, and he is very active in a group of settlers who are working with Palestinians in the West Bank in an initiative called Shorashim Judur, which means roots in Hebrew and Arabic, trying to build some kind of joint future. Anyone else want to comment, share?
To me, it's very reminiscent, and I'm not sure I'm happy about it, of the Shoah, when the arm with the blue luminous numbers. I was very much here. I had just made Aliyah when this started, and it was a terrifying moment in history for myself and my family as New Olim, but I did not associate this with the Shoah the way the blue luminous numbers do. The wound of the bullets. I felt differently about this, but the part about you shall love Israel with all your heart, even during that time, I didn't feel that God had forgotten us. I felt that people had forgotten us, as Elie Wiesel said about the Shoah.
Interesting. So you're pointing out, by the way, here that what Elias Cohen is doing here is he's sort of telescoping these various historical events into one, right? Writing them in blood is Mitzrayim, and then the wound of the bullet, the Intifada, but the blue luminous numbers are the Shoah. And what he seems to be suggesting here is that our history is one long litany of horrible events, of which the Second Intifada is just another of them, and you're not comfortable with that idea?
Not very. I didn't feel that we had been forgotten by God when we were here. Yeah, recently arrived.
May I add something?
Of course, go ahead.
This takes me and our family directly to October 7th because it's never ending. I'm second generation, kids are third, served in the Israeli military, what you call a significant service, mashma'uti, and we spent October 7th in the Mamad on Kfar Aza. And afterwards, we didn't go into big philosophical discussions, but we had a short thing in our family connected to that. And then we let it go. We don't go too deeply into that kind of stuff. But it's all still there. It goes from Shoah to October 7th, and there everything in between. So it's very much alive, which is why I'm here in this class right now.
So you do identify, and you
Oh, yeah.
said if Elias Cohen would have written this year or last year, then he could have added another line.
Or if somebody would have written it in 1946. Yeah, completely.
Mhm.
Very much. Just when I explain sometimes when I do the Yom HaShoah, we have the Zikaron B'Salon, talking about personal families. And there's things like that come up. And I say the only reason we were raised religious, or in America in a conservative shul. After the war, my father was completely not interested, not religious. If he would have made Aliyah, we would have been raised secular Israeli because he didn't need anything. It's the fact that he had to raise Jewish children in the diaspora brought him first back to a synagogue and then to Jewish day school with the money he got restitution. So that speaks to everything in our family. And it could have been written exactly then.
And I think really that this is one of the things that is painful here in Israel about October 7th, that I think many people responded like you, Tamar, that no, what we're experiencing here in Israel is qualitatively different than what we experienced during the history, because now here in the state of Israel we have more agency, we have more power, we can defend ourselves and so on. But then perhaps October 7th suddenly
Yes.
reconnected us
Yes.
to
So to add the next stage to the story, my sister was in Boulder 3 weeks ago when they were attacked. So we didn't have a family connection, and in previous times, if people would have had, oh, there's anti-Semitism in America or anti-Semitism in Europe, my knee-jerk response, oh, well, we have a Jewish country, come here. And I can't say that anymore. It's after October 7th, I don't feel comfortable saying, oh, come to the state of Israel, we'll protect you. And it was a big watershed.
yes, hence the anger and the pain. I want to continue a little bit further, still with this metaphor of God's tefillin, and go back a little bit in history and time to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Miberdichev, who was a famous Hasidic rabbi. His nickname is Sanegoram Shel Israel, the defense attorney of Israel. And this is based upon a text like what we're going to be reading here. This is from a book that is written about the Hasidic masters. So the book tells thus: Levi Yitzchak ben Sarah stood before his creator and argued, "You said through your prophets, and I will espouse you forever. Ve'erastich li le'olam. You yourself bore witness that you betrothed Israel by chuppah and kiddushin. Therefore I ask you, Master of the universe, does an honest husband thus treat his wife, as you treat your people Israel? Does a man abandon his wife to the street as you have abandoned your people Israel?" And look how harsh these words are. How he really castigates God. "See, Master of the world, when tefillin fall from the hand of a Jew, he hastens to bend, pick them up, and kiss them. Whereas your tefillin contain the words, 'Who is like your people Israel, one nation in the land?' More than 2,000 years they're humiliated, and you do not raise them. Again, you see, using the same metaphor of God's tefillin, containing the words, who is like your people, Israel, one nation in the land. And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak from Berdichev says, if you treat these tefillin seriously, like we treat ours seriously, when our tefillin fall to the ground, we raise them and we kiss them. How come you're not doing the same? How come you're letting us be downtrodden and humiliated? And again, these very harsh words, and we see that Rabbi Levi Yitzchak is continuing in the tradition of Abraham. But whereas Abraham was crying out at God on behalf of the people of Sodom, Levi Yitzchak is crying out on behalf of the people of Israel. If we are your spouse, then treat us like an honest husband should treat his spouse. Don't abandon us like you're abandoning us. And this sense of abandonment is something that is quite prevalent in the texts written by the rabbis after the destruction of the Second Temple. And here is a prime example, a very interesting example. It starts by quoting a verse from the Psalms. Your foes roar inside your meeting place. They take their signs for true signs. And what this midrash is trying to do is to see who these foes roaring inside your meeting place, who is it signifying? And what the midrash chooses to do is to connect this pasuk, this verse, to Titus. Titus is the Roman general who later became Caesar, who conquered Jerusalem during the Great Revolt in the year 70 CE, and ultimately destroyed the Second Temple. So he says, this verse refers to Titus the wicked, who blasphemed and reviled against heaven. What did he do? He seized a prostitute in his hand and entered the Holy of Holies. He spread out a Torah scroll and committed a transgression upon it. Again, picture this occurrence here. Titus is taking a Torah scroll, and we treat the Torah scrolls with reverence. We fast when we by mistake drop them. We kiss them. We cover them. We really take care of them almost like a human being. But Titus here takes them and uses them as a bed sheet. When he lies with a prostitute that he took into the Holy of Holies, into the very center of the temple. And I remind you, into the Holy of Holies, only the high priest is allowed to enter, only one day during the year on Yom Kippur. And when he enters, he has a rope tied to his ankle so that if he's overcome when he's inside the Holy of Holies, then we don't need to go in after him to get him, but we can drag him out, because really the Holy of Holies is such a special place that only the high priest can enter. And here Titus takes the prostitute, lays out the scroll, and lies with her within the Holy of Holies. Then he took out a sword and slashed the curtain, and a miracle occurred. Blood spurted forth. And that wicked man thought he had slain himself, slain God. Because if the Holy of Holies is the place of residence of God, and Titus slashed the curtain and suddenly blood spurts, then he thought he'd killed God. Now this is the story, and now there's a rabbinic discussion about it. Abba Hanan, one of the sages, said, who is mighty like you, O God? Who is, and this is a pasuk, a verse, Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai. Who is mighty and harsh, that you hear the blasphemy and revilement of that wicked one, yet remain silent? And you see here that Abba Hanan takes this verse, this pasuk, who is mighty like you, and when juxtaposed with the story about Titus, how do we resolve them? And Abba Hanan says, well, actually, This is a way of mightiness in the fact that God is able to see this horrible occurrence within the Holy of Holies and remain silent. This is a show of strength that he reins himself in and he doesn't intervene. But then look at the other interpretation, this by the school of Rabbi Ishmael. The school of Rabbi Ishmael taught, "Who is like you among the mighty, O Lord?" This is the original verse. They take the verse and they change it to, "Who is like you among the mute?" Now, in English, it looks very cryptic, but I want to show you how it works out in the Hebrew. So look at this next slide, which is the Hebrew verse. The original Hebrew verse is Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai. Who is among you in the mighty or in the gods? Hashem. And what the Midrash of the school of Rabbi Ishmael did was just add 1 or 2 letters. Inside of the word ba'elim, they added a mem, or maybe a mem yud, and suddenly they transformed the pasuk into Mi chamocha ba'ilmim, and ilem is mute. So suddenly what they're saying is, you have been transformed from the mighty God to the mute God. And you can feel the anger pulsing underneath this midrash. God, how can you let this happen? How can you be silent? How can you be mute when these horrible things are happening? And I think perhaps the irony, the bitter irony of this midrash is made even stronger when we look at the context of this pasuk. And the context, and I want to show it through Steven Spielberg's wonderful Prince of Egypt, and Ofra Chaza, who is singing in the background. This is the Exodus from Egypt. And I will wave my hand when she sings along with the choir, the pasuk that we've just read. Oh, sorry.
הידעתם? פרבון מחדש את כל הבגדים הצבעוניים שלכם. נסו עכשיו.
Sorry about that. You hear this? מי כמוך באלים אדוני. מי כמוך נהדר בקודש.
We're not getting the sound.
Sorry. Wait, I need to stop sharing and share the sound. And I'm going to do it because they have such beautiful voices. So excuse me for the glitch. Okay, here we go. Next one's מי כמוך באלים. So in the Prince of Egypt, Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai accompanies this joyful scene of the demonstration of God's power. The exodus from Egypt, the crossing of the Red Sea, the overcoming of Egypt, and all these people are streaming out from hundreds of years of bondage. And then hundreds of years later, where is God? The sages take that verse that epitomizes the power of God, and adding one letter to one word, they flip the verse completely. From Mi kamocha ba'elim to Mi kamocha ba'ilmim. You are mute. Where is your power? Where is your strength? Why aren't you intervening on our behalf? We saw you in Egypt, so why aren't we seeing you now? A very powerful midrash. And jumping from that midrash, from after the destruction of the Second Temple, this poem was written by Rivka Lubitsch after October 7. Just a minute. I think when I shared, yes.
That's in the handout, that poem.
It's in the handout, yes, should be. Rivka Lubitsch is a rabbi's wife, an Orthodox rabbi's wife, who is very active in Israel, mostly fighting for women's rights in the rabbinical court system. And after October 7, she wrote this poem. And I'm going to read it first and then ask you, what does it echo? The guardian of Israel slumbers and sleeps. A song for the fallen. I lifted my eyes to the mountains, but my help did not come. I have no help from the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. He let my feet falter. He let my guardians sleep. Behold, the guardian of Israel slumbers and sleeps. The Lord did not watch over me. The Lord did not shade my right hand. By day the sun struck me and the moon at night. The Lord did not guard me from all harm, nor did he keep my soul. How will the Lord watch over my coming and going from now until forever? What's she doing here?
It's like
She took
Job.
the prayer. She took the prayer that is recited at least twice a day in most of the synagogues. This from the Tehillim, Hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael. And this is Al Yitain Lemotogrecha Al Yamut Shomrecha. She took the exact poem and turned it to the negative. That is recited in most of the synagogues today,
Right.
since October 7th.
Line by line, she went and reversed the lines.
I'm not sure if I would say it's something negative. I think it's simply deeply human that after a catastrophe happens, a lot of us have that one moment of like, what happened and why did it happen?
But is there also a sense of abandonment, or is it just bewilderment? Or perhaps they're the same thing.
It seems to me that it is an angry indictment against Hashem for abandoning us. She's angry. And she cynically uses that psalm to hoist this indictment against Hashem for not providing the the help and the nechama that we so desperately needed.
I think it's interesting your different readings of the dominant feeling here. Is it anger? Is it pain? Is it bewilderment? Is it abandonment? Maybe it's a mix of all these
Disappointment.
things.
It's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, it's all of them, all of the above.
Yeah. The last line shows a little bit of anxiety or fear for the future. He's abandoned us, seems to have abandoned us now, angry and disappointed and fearful. But how will the Lord watch over my coming and going from now until forever? It's like, now what? The future is now in question. The faith is kind of shaken.
And I know many people have had crises of faith following October 7. You know, the original psalm is so confident in feeling sort of watched over and enveloped by God's sustainment and watching. And here suddenly there's this feeling of, where is he? What's going on?
What she has written is a parody, and a parody is a mocking of the original. And she essentially is, I think, mocking God. Who do you think what kind of a God are you? How are we going to, this is what we worship, and we've been abandoned. So I think it's very bitter, and I can understand her, definitely.
Mi kamocha ba'ilmim. It's interesting how these echoes from the past sort of merge with our feelings in the present.
Absolutely.
The rabbis from after the destruction, Jeremiah from after the first destruction, and here this angry, bitter, bewildered, abandoned, what have you poem. By the way, this poem is part of a collection. In the recent decades, 2 compendia of midrashim written by women have been published. I forget the name of the editor, and I hope it'll come back to me because it needs to be said. And she started collecting new midrashim after October 7 and is planning to publish them soon. And this is one of the first that were collected within that effort. Going back and forth, now back again. This is Yaakov Barzilai. He's a Holocaust survivor who writes many poems that are very connected to Jewish texts on the one hand, and very angry at God on the other. And he uses that same pasuk, who among the gods is like you, my Lord? Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai. Who has loved us with a true love and redeemed us from the sorrows of this world. You've opened gates for us to pass through, that our days and the days of our children may be many in the world to come. For you have chosen us to be worthy to sanctify your name in the furnaces. Every one of these lines is a take on a verse or a well-known midrash, but you see how he, again, bitterly, perhaps sporadically, takes them into the direction of, really? This is how we sanctify your name in the furnaces of the Shoah, of the Holocaust. And I want to move towards closing with two midrashim, two interesting midrashim about the very first murder in the world, and that is the murder of Abel by Cain. And you probably remember the biblical story where Cain and Abel sacrificed to God, but God looks in favor upon the sacrifice of Abel and not upon the sacrifice of Cain. And Cain murders Abel. And you know that the first few chapters of Genesis are sort of the Jewish mythology. The first murder, the first family, the first tower, and so on. And so there's a lot to be learned by looking at that, all those firsts. They're sort of a prototype of what is to come. So looking at the first murder is interesting in this context. And this first midrash is from Bereshit Rabbah. It's the classical midrash about Bereshit, about Genesis, written in the land of Israel about the 5th century CE. And it starts with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai from Lag BaOmer fame. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said, "It is difficult to say it, and it's impossible for the mouth to enunciate it." This is a sort of a phrase that the rabbis use several times in their texts that is like a flashing warning sign. And what it says is, we are now going to drop a theological bomb. We're going to say something really theologically outrageous. But, the rabbis say, it's not us that is saying it. It's the text that is saying it. All we're doing is just saying what the text is saying. And of course, this is something, a tool, a method that the rabbis often use, saying, what do you want from us? It's not us who are saying it, it's the text, it's the Bible. But then usually what they say is not the simple reading of the text at all. What they're saying is what they want to say, and they're maybe scared to say it on their own account, so they're trying to foist it onto the biblical text. Oh, it's not us, it's it. It's the biblical text itself. We're just explicating it. So flashing warning signs, theological, are flashing here, okay? Hold your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is going to throw a theological bomb. And he says, this is analogous to two athletes who are standing and wrestling before the king. I remind you that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who lives in the 2nd century CE, lives in a world dominated by Roman culture. And in a world dominated by Roman culture, in the many amphitheaters that you can see when you travel Israel, it was very customary to bring athletes to wrestle, either with themselves or with lions or various wild beasts that were brought before them. And this struggle, this wrestling, of course, was to the death. So when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai uses this metaphor, he probably saw it with his own eyes, two athletes wrestling in a theater someplace in Israel. And he continues, had the king wished, he could have separated them, the athletes. But the king did not wish to separate them. One overpowered his counterpart and killed him. And he, the victim, was screaming and saying, who will demand justice for me before the king? So the voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. Kol demei achicha zoakim elai min ha'adama. So who are the athletes here? Cain and Abel. And who is the king? God. And this midrash perhaps is suggesting that God is the one who put the athletes in the theater to wrestle. And moreover, God could have intervened to save the life of the overpowered athlete. He could have raised his thumb, as they used to do in Roman times, but he chose not to act, and therefore the murder took place. basically what this midrash is saying, that every injustice, every murder, every war, every horrible thing that happens in the world is the result of God setting up the world in the way that this is what happens, and also not intervening to right it when things go wrong. And I want to read the second midrash about Cain and Abel before we have a couple of minutes to comment. Again, another traditional midrash about Bereshit. This may be compared to a thief who steals during the night. Oh, it's not Cain and Abel. I forgot, sorry. A thief who steals during the night but is not apprehended while committing the crime. When the watchman seizes him the next morning and asks, "Why did you steal those utensils?" the thief replies, "I'm a thief. I didn't neglect my profession. Your job is to keep watch at the gate. So why did you neglect your duties? Now you question me?" So Cain retorted, "True, I slew him, but you created the evil inclination within me. Since you are the guardian of all, why did you permit me to slay him? You who are called the Eye killed him, for if you had accepted my sacrifice as you accepted his, I would not have been envious of him." So look at all the reasons why God is to blame for the murder. He set up the world to work this way. He showed preference for Abel, causing Cain to be envious. He made Cain with an evil inclination inside of him, as we all are made. He set up the scene, and he did not intervene. So Cain says to God, "Now you want to blame me? You want to blame the human being? You are to blame for it all." And I sort of alluded to this in my opening, that perhaps we should not be angry at God, but at human beings, because after all, it's the human beings who are murdering and starting wars and engaging in wars and bombing and so on. But this midrash really goes to the very fundamentals of this and asks, well, but God is the master of the universe. He set it up this way. He's not intervening. He's creating human beings who are lustful, who are sinful, who are in search of power and glory and money and honor. And so, yes, he is the address. He should be the one to blame. Go ahead, Trudy. We have 2 more minutes, so now is the time for any comments or thoughts.
No, I was just thinking, so where does that get us? If we can't look to God for what? What are we looking to God for then? All the examples that you brought have left us disappointed. So where do you go from there?
Well, I think blaming God is a cop-out because we were given free choice. We wanted to be free. We wanted to be independent human beings able to make a choice. And God said, "I place before you the good and the evil. Choose the good, choose life." And now we're paying the consequences for those who don't, which is, it's not just, but it seems that's the way it is.
I don't have an answer.
I didn't expect you would.
Yes. Yes, I assume so. But I think I find it somewhat comforting to find that we're not the first generation, of course, to struggle with these thoughts, with these doubts, perhaps, with these feelings, and the Jews throughout the generations have been expressing these thoughts, these feelings, these doubts. and trying to come to terms with them.
I was thinking of another dialogue, which is the one between Moshe Rabbeinu and God when after the golden calf, God wanted to destroy all of us. And it was Moshe who said, have pity, this group just came out of slavery. They got left Egypt, but they didn't get Egypt out of them. And, God had pity on us and kept us going with the hope that we will make the right choices the next time around, which we probably didn't. But.
Yeah, it's a nice example of how strong a tradition we have of human beings having the courage to speak against God, to try and bring him around. Maybe if we all do it strongly enough, then something good will come out of it.
But God has also thought of Avinu, our father, and we have children, you and I, who look at us, the parents, and say, what have you brought? That's how they look at us, which is a scary thing to think about. And I want to go back to him.
So we have to end. I want to thank you for being here along with me as I struggle, along with perhaps several of you, along with all those Jews from all those centuries before us, with these questions. And hopefully may we soon see better times. Leitraot, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yishakar. Thank you.